So, yes, my name is Paolo Di Tommaso. I'm a research engineer at the Center for Genomic Regulation, that is a research institute in life sciences in Barcelona, this beautiful building just in front of the sea. And I will continue some other discussion about containers and HPC, and I will start mentioning the two big problems that we are facing in computational biology nowadays. One is the classical one, computational problem. We have a lot of data that is becoming available, in particular due to the radical, to the revolutionary in genomic sequences. If 15 years ago to sequence just one genome costed $100 million, and require a lot of people to manage this task, nowadays it's a very easy task. You can sequence genomes with $1,000. So there is a lot of this data around that is produced also using devices like this that are portable devices. You can attach to your computer and you can sequence DNA, RNA strands that need to be analyzed. That is the problem then. Oops, too much, too short. Oh, sorry. So there is an increasing amount of data that is growing in an exponential manner that need to be analyzed in an efficient way. And to analyze all this data, we use computational pipelines. So there are big data analysis applications that are what is called a reproducibility problem. That means that most of the time these computational pipelines are difficult to replicate over time across different infrastructure. So we have this problem that we have these data analysis applications that are very difficult to replicate the result. This is obviously an issue because science is founded on the ability to replicate experiments. So if your data analysis application does not produce the same result, is a big problem. And just to mention this paper try to quantify the amount of work that is necessary to replicate the result of a typical computational biology paper. They found out that there are needed 280 hours. This is a lot of work only to replicate the result, not to write a new method. So more than amount of work to replicate the result of an experiment. And the question is, what's the problem with computational workflow? Why is needed all this work to replicate an experiment when computers in the end have been designed to replicate the same sequence of steps over time? And the problem is complexity, obviously. We have this data analysis application that at the end of the day are huge scripts with a lot of dependencies that are binary tools, compiler, library, system tools, configuration file that need to be configured and managed properly to run your data analysis application. And then also by their experimental nature, academic software tend to be in a prototype form. So in the meaning that it's difficult to install, configure, it's difficult to deploy because scientists at the end are just interested in the experiment. They don't have time or resources to write a nice installation procedure or an easy package to be configured. And also another big problem that are the different execution platform which we want to run this data analysis application. Most of the time you want just to develop in a single machine, a laptop, and then deploy this workflow in a big on a HPC system, on a cluster computer, or even the cloud. And so all these platforms have different interfaces or even different computational models. Think about, I don't know, MPI or PGAS or GPU or whatever. Once you have developed this piece of software for a platform, it's very difficult to port to another platform. And containers are emerging like a solution to at least to some of these problems because it allows you to create this package that contains all the dependencies of an application that can be just downloaded around. So we already see some presentation about containers. The only thing that I like to say that containers are basically a third big wave in virtualization technology. We had the virtualization instruction level, a CPU level in the 90s, think about Java virtual machine. Then we had virtual machine, the classical virtual machine, the 2000. Now we have container that is something in the middle because a virtualization operating system level, that is something more lightweight. At the end of the day, you can think like lightweight virtual machine with some nice feature. They have a smaller image, a faster instantiation time compared to virtual machine. They provide almost native performance, and the beauty, in particular with Docker, that there is an easy procedure to create this image, to publish them, and to share with other people. So you can create this package, other person can download and run it in a very easy way. And from a developer point of view, the beauty of containers is that allows you to run any command in a transparent way. In the meaning that, let's say that you have a generic tool, generic command that you want to execute with some inputs, and then if you want to run in a container, you can just prepend this command line. You say docker run the image, and then the same command. And the magic command line option, how to say, of Docker are these -v that allows you to mount the current path, an identical path in the container, and then you say -w, you specify that the working path in the container is the same on the hosting environment. So basically, you run this command in the container in an identical manner. You don't have to change nothing in your tool. And so, the easy approach to containerization, you can use Docker image to package all the dependencies of your workflow, DATAFLOW or data analysis application, the scripts, the configuration file, the environment configuration, the binary tools, whatever you need. You create this big package, and then whoever has this Docker engine can run this piece of software without having to install these things. This is nice, but I have a problem that you are limited to the resources provided by this hosting environment, the CPU, the memory. Instead, here the challenge is to be able to scale this application across your computer, and the question is, who is going to manage all this container? How we launch the command in this container in a cluster or in a cloud environment? And for this reason are emerging a lot of tools that are these Worm, Fleet, Kubernetes, that was mentioned also before by Christian. These are very interesting pieces of software, but my point is that they are not the right answer for computational pipelines, because they are tools that are designed for services orchestration, not for task scheduling. So they are completely different problem. Our solution was to use this piece of software that is Nextflow, that is a pipeline framework that we are developing, that enables you also to launch tasks using containers. So the point that using Nextflow, you can run any task in any container, and since the task run inside the container, you can compose the execution of this container, then reading the files in the hosting file system. So this is also the main difference compared to virtual machine, because you cannot compose the execution of many virtual machines together. Instead, with containers, this is possible because they have this fast execution time, because at the end they run the host operating system. And so, I will introduce a bit this tool. It is Nextflow. This is a workflow framework that allows you to run the same pipeline across different platforms. In the meaning that you can reuse the same code without having to implement to adapt, I don't know, to a Slang cluster or a SunGrid engine cluster, or even in a cloud platform. And the beauty that it provides also a high-level parallelization model to make it easy to deploy a large scalable workload without having to deal with low-level implementation details about parallelization and concurrency management. And then, yes, isolated task dependency using containers. And what is also really, really nice, that it enables the fast prototyping or data analysis application or using any existing piece of software that you may need or you have. So a workflow script at the end of the day, just a composition of several processes, And the process is something defined in this way. There is this process keyword, and then you provide the process name, and then there are three big blocks. One, where you define the input of this task, so what is needed to run this job. Then you declare what are the outputs that are going to be expected at the end of the execution of the task, and finally, a script that is just a multi-line string where you can specify any command or more commands that need to be executed to carry out this task. So it's a very easy approach, but has the advantage for us that it is very easy to write any piece of software that we want to run. Also declare in an easy way, in a readable way, what are the dependencies in our task. What are the inputs? What are the outputs? It's very well defined. So our pipeline, at the end of the day, is just composition of this processes. So we create a kind of reactive network because all these processes are executed in parallel, and they communicate using an asynchronous messaging system that is based on the DATAFLOW programming model. This is the key component of the framework, and DATAFLOW is used in different contexts with different meaning, but in this case I'm referring to a declarative computational model for concurrent process execution. So, and basically what is happening that all these processes are running parallel and just wait for data. When an input set is ready, this triggers execution of the task that executes its own job and produces an output, and then this output is sent to a downstream task, trigger another task. So there is this reactive processing model that makes it easy to manage a parallel workload without having to write too much code. Also because all the parallelization, the dependencies are defined implicitly in the task definition. You don't have to say this piece of code is parallel, this is sequential, but by definition, in this model, everything is sequential. Then, depending how you declare the input and the outputs in these processes, they are automatically define the dependencies between them. Another feature of the framework that provides you the ability to write this pipeline in a platform agnostic way, in the meaning that when this pipeline runs, it creates many tasks that are executed throughout this executor layer that allows you to switch the target executing platform at runtime. Or so you can choose to execute this task in a single machine or in a clustered computer or in the cloud, just modifying the configuration file of this pipeline. Currently, we are supporting this platform that is Univa, Open Grid Engine, LSF, Torque, Slarm, PBS, and then also some cloud platform, including obviously Amazon AWS. And to clarify a bit how does it work, this mechanism, let's say that we want to run a pipeline workload using a batch scheduler. What is going to happen that we run Nextflow in the login node that work like a driver application that starts submitting tasks to the batch scheduler for each process in our workflow. And then all these things, obviously run, they share the result using a shared file system. This is the approach that is implemented also by many other pipeline frameworks. It's nothing new, but works fine, but has the limitation that if your pipeline is submitting 1,000, 10,000, even more, 100,000 jobs, you will saturate the cluster because you submit too many tasks to the batch scheduler. For this reason, and also to support in a more compliant way, the HPC memory distributed model, Nextflow support also distributed computing model. The meaning that we can submit this pipeline with a single job request, allocating all the resources that we need. So 4 nodes or 40 nodes, depending how big is your job. And what is going to happen that we'll launch an instance of Nextflow in each of these nodes. The first one became the driver, and then the other became the worker. These instances create automatically a cluster inside the cluster in somehow that manage the execution of the task on its own. And This maybe could seem complex or a bit weird, but at the end, what we are doing is just executing Nextflow like if it were an MPI application, but it is not an MPI application. But we take advantage of the MPI run utility to spawn many instances of these two in each instance or in each node, which are able to create a cluster in Fly and then manage the execution of the pipeline with its own scheduler embedded in the Nextflow itself. We use this approach to launch, for example, a phylogenetic pipeline, Mare Nostrum, the supercomputer in Barcelona. We exceeded 400,000 jobs using 500 cores for an aggregate total execution time more or less 5,000 CPU hours. So this is a good use case. I'm not saying that it is obviously better than MPI, absolutely not, but what is interesting that it's very easy to manage it, to prototype this script. We need only 500 lines of code that a PhD student can manage to do in a couple of days. And also, the nice thing that we can have this code running, as I said before, on different platforms, only changing this configuration file, where we say, okay, I want to run this pipeline using an executor that is LARM or SunGrid engine or whatever, and then you specify what are the resources that are needed to run this thing. The queue, the memory, the CPU, etc. You can specify for all the tasks in your pipeline, or you can specify for each task the sets of resources that are needed. And then, you see, I can also specify what container, what Docker image I want to use to launch the execution of this pipeline. When I specify this, the tasks in the pipeline are executed in the container automatically without having to change my code. And we validated this approach in our institute where we modified our Univa Grid engine in such a way that we are able to deploy computational pipelines that run using Docker containers, basically installing a Docker engine in each node in our cluster. So when a researcher needs to execute pipeline with this system, upload the Docker image to this registry, and then launch the execution with Nextflow in the head node of the cluster, which will start submitting jobs to the computing cluster, adding to the queue sub command, other than the resources that are needed, the memory and the CPU, also the Docker image that is needed to launch this task. This way, the cluster will try to look for the node having already that image, and if that node is not available, we'll use another node, which will automatically download the Docker image needed on demand when the task starts. So the advantage is that this way we don't have to configure all the pieces of software that we need to run this pipeline one by one, but we only need to specify what is the Docker image, which is automatically deployed in this cluster. So a super easy deployment procedure, and we have a precise manner to control all the dependencies in our pipeline. At the same time, we can reproduce any configuration, because what happens usually is that over the time, the configuration of your system changes. And then you may need to replicate the result that you executed 6 months ago or 1 year before, just changing a parameter. And you have the usual problem that you need to reconfigure the system, or you may even don't remember exactly what was the configuration. Instead, this way we just specify what it was, the Docker image that we use, and that's is done. The disadvantages, well, we saw also yesterday, we talked a bit about, but the main problem that Docker requires modern Linux kernel 3.10, and also there are some security concerns, because when you launch Docker, it's run a daemon with root permission. And also there is other problem about the user namespace, that you can run a Docker container with root permission, and that container is able to interact with the hosting kernel with root permission. So there are still some problems that need to be managed. And for this reason, I think that shifter could be a better alternative in the HPC environment. We already, yesterday, we saw a presentation about shifter, but just to summarize, we can say that it is a container framework that is designed for HPC environment. So it's a better solution in some cases. Nextflow has already a built-in support for shifter that we are testing. So the nice thing that we can swap one workload to use Docker containers or use shifter containers just with a configuration setting in the pipeline configuration file. And then, what about the performance of running an HPC workload or a genomic pipeline, in this case, with containers? We run this benchmark testing 3 different genomic pipelines. This was the RNA-seq pipeline, then a variant calling pipeline, then PyPAR, that is another RNA mapping pipeline, and they gave very different results. The first pipeline was basically there was no slowdown. The second one, there was a 2.4% of slowdown when executing this application. And the last one was a significant slowdown, 65%. And to understand this difference, we need to look at the granularity of the task. The first one was executing few tasks, very long running. These are minutes, and the average mean execution time was 128 minutes, so 2 hours. The second case were more tasks, but was shorter, 26 minutes. And finally, the last one were 98 tasks, but they were very short, just 0.6 minutes, so a few seconds. And so what is happening now is more clear that the Docker instantiation time, even if it is small, can become a problem when the granularity of your task is very fine, because it has an overhead that you should take consideration. But in our case, it was not a big issue because in genomic pipeline, tasks tend to be very long in time. And okay, I have a few slides that show a demo how you can use these tools. Let's say that you have developed a pipeline and you published, or somebody else published on GitHub. So the usual thing that you need to do when you want to run a piece of code like this, you need to clone the repository, and then you need to install the dependencies of this application. That can be mapper or whatever, all the tools that need to be installed, compiled in your system. Instead, in this case, the only thing that you need to know is the repository name. Since this is a Nextflow pipeline, you can open a user terminal. You just say Nextflow run the project name. What is going to happen that Nextflow will try to look for the code in this machine. If it is not available, we'll download it automatically from GitHub and then store in a centralized directory and launch the execution of the pipeline. Then, since we have succeeded also Docker image to this application, we can specify this option with Docker, and it will also download automatically the Docker registry, the Docker image that is needed from the registry. And so, then we'll launch the execution of the pipeline using the data that you may have uploaded in the repository itself. Obviously, you can provide your own data using the command line parameters, but what is nice is that you have a single command that in a consistent manner can re-execute your piece of code tracking all the dependencies. You can even specify a revision to maintain an instant revision your tools. And this revision is nothing more than the tag or the branch that you have defined to the GitHub repository. So you can tag multiple versions of while you are developing this tool and execute a specific branch or tag of this application. The nice thing that since you can associate a Docker image to this application, this way you can switch not only to a different code version of your application, but also to a different set of binary tools that are used by it. And finally, if you want to run in a cluster computer, you just specify a configuration file like this, and you can deploy into a cluster. In conclusion, I want just to mention some institutes or some people that are using this project, and they are most of them research institute or university. In particular, there is the International Agency Research on Cancer that is starting to migrate their pipeline to Nextflow for its ability to manage the application in a reproducible manner. And in conclusion, the main thing, in my opinion, is that containers are game changer for computational pipelines because it allows you to package, deploy your tools in a more reproducible manner. I'm not sure that Docker is going to be the leader in the field of HPC, but containers, in my opinion, is going to have a future in this field. And Nextflow is a reactive functional framework for a computational workflow. Allows you to write your pipeline in a portable manner across different platforms. And using together Nextflow with Docker, you get reproducible self-contained pipeline that you can execute with just command in your terminal. To conclude, I want to say thanks to some people that are contributing to this project. Evan Flöden, that managed to run this pipeline Barcelona Supercomputing Center, collecting the data. Emilio Palumbo that managed to install Shifter in our cluster. Maria Chatsu at Notre Dame that are supporting this project. Thank you for your attention. Here there are some slides if you're interested, and some slides, some links. Thank you.